Tired of the ordinary at lunchtime? Why not try something smart to chew on? The Lunchroom on RCI, Monday to Friday, 12:45 to 2 p.m. The Lunchroom, informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI, food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International for Friday the 10th of October 2025, and we are on to program number 1464 of the Lunchroom. I'm your host, Calix George Jr. Of course, in addition to radio 101.1 FM, you can also get us at our website, rcistlucia.com. We're streaming live on Facebook. You just have to search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International, and please be sure to like and share that as well with your family and friends. And if you don't have Facebook and you want to find us online, you can also do that on YouTube. We're live there as well. Of course, if you want to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, the number to do so is 4523046. Again, 4523046. And you also have the option of WhatsApp. That is 724-0008. In just a bit, we're going to be kicking back and starting on our Republic Corner with Republic Bank EC Limited. And we're going to be, for this month, which is in fact Financial Literacy Month, focusing on the entire matter of the importance of financial literacy and how Republic Bank can help you with just that. So that's coming up in just a bit, our Republic Corner. But first, we want to send out some birthday greetings for today. First to my father-in-law, Mr. Francis Florius. Happy birthday to you, sir, and we hope that you're having a fantastic and wonderful birthday celebration. Also to Mr. Pancras McGriffin Theodore, happy birthday to you. And some may know him as the Mighty Terror, an individual who held a record for the most crowns back in Calypso competition. And so, of course, we want to wish him a wonderful birthday as well. And also to Mr. Kirby Sidney, celebrating his birthday today, wishing you an absolutely wonderful and fantastic day as well, Kirby. A look back in time on this day in the year 1780, the Great Hurricane of 1780, sometimes known as the Hurricane of the Calixtus Hurricane, after the feast day of St. Calixtus on the 14th. That great hurricane of 1780 hit Barbados on this day and goes on to kill 20 to 30,000 people in the Caribbean, making it the deadliest recorded hurricane in the Atlantic. In the year 1871, the Great Chicago Fire was finally extinguished after 3 days, leaving approximately 300 individuals dead and over 100,000 homeless and approximately $222 million in damage. In the year 1911, on this day, Chinese revolutionaries began an armed rebellion against the ruling Qing dynasty in Wuchang, causing the viceroy of Hu Guang, to flee the city. And this is also known in Taiwan as Double 10 Day. In fact, it is National Day for Taiwan. And, of course, it's a major holiday for them. In the year 1954, Ho Chi Minh entered Hanoi in Vietnam after the withdrawal of French troops. 1957, on this day, a fire at the Windscale nuclear plant in Cumbria in England became the world's first major nuclear accident. And we now move on to our dish of the day.
Every bed in our hospitals tells a story of someone's mother, someone's brother, someone's friend. And when that story of care is complete, it's time for the next chapter, home. But too often, discharged patients are left waiting hours, days, weeks, sometimes months, not because they want to stay, but because no one comes. We understand life gets busy, but every extra day they wait means another patient, perhaps in pain, perhaps in crisis, can't get the bed they desperately need. So when the call comes that your loved one is ready, please be ready too. Pick them up. Bring them back to the comfort of family, where healing truly continues. Because caring doesn't end at discharge. It continues with you. A message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program for the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. Of course, we do hope that you've had a very good day. It's, of course, a very rainy day here in St. Lucia. In fact, upon the advice of NEMO, we've seen of schools being closed today. And that, of course, is because of the impacts that we've been feeling of Tropical Storm Jerry, and heading towards the Leeward Islands, but a pretty large system, very extensive system, and it certainly caused quite a lot of rainfall over here in St. Lucia, lots of thunder and lightning over the evening, but thankfully no significant damage has yet been reported. But of course, individuals are being asked to exercise caution, especially in flood-prone as well as landslide-prone areas. And as well, advice coming for small craft operators and sea bathers being exercised to advised to exercise due caution due to the locally rough seas. And of course, pointing out that it's not a direct threat to St. Lucia, but certainly we have been feeling the impacts, of course, all on the anniversary of that great hurricane of 1780, which did tremendous damage to St. Lucia well over 245 years ago. And it certainly is one of those recorded hurricanes that seem to have destroyed, I think, nearly every single church in St. Lucia was destroyed. It was a kind of storm, a hurricane that was described as taking off the barks of the trees. So powerful was the wind in that hurricane. And so certainly it had a major impact in that time. And it's, of course, a good reminder that we all, of course, have to be cautious about the impacts of hurricanes and tropical systems, even at a time like this, where we are seemingly, we've been enjoying some relatively calm weather for the time in terms of the hurricane season this year. Most of the systems seem to have veered northwards and have not impacted the Caribbean for the most part, albeit, of course, some very interesting weather phenomenon notwithstanding. There was a very interesting incident where two hurricanes effectively collided, one feeding off the other, and a very interesting phenomena. I think the Fukuoka phenomena, and it was being studied by meteorologists, climatologists as well, with interest. And of course, within quite recently, we also witnessed a water spout occurring very near the mouth of the Castries Harbor, and was certainly visible for most people in the Castries area. Very, very interesting, somewhat ominous views. And then not too shortly long after that, over in Trinidad and Tobago, they too witnessed another interesting situation. In this instance, a tornado making landfall and causing a fair bit of devastation in some suburban port of Spain. Many roofs, in fact, being lost and damaged as a result of that tornado. And so it's certainly not what we're quite used to, but you never know how these things continue to pan out. And it certainly is a good reminder of preparedness and the type of devastation that we do have to face and are sometimes dealing with right here in the Caribbean. So, of course, school being out, we do hope that students, children are safe at home and away from harm's way. Now, of course, we're supposed to be getting in, like I said, that call from Republic Bank. We may have to see whether they'll actually be calling in soon, but effectively, that was the major part regarding our dish of the day. And so we'll have to continue to see whether we can get that call in. But we're going to end our dish of the day at this point and then come back in to open up the lines.
This has been The Daily Dish.
Every bed in our hospitals tells a story of someone's mother, someone's brother, someone's friend. And when that story of care is complete, it's time for the next chapter, home. But too often, discharged patients are left waiting hours, days, weeks, sometimes months, not because they want to stay, but because no one comes. We understand life gets busy, but every extra day they wait means another patient, perhaps in pain, perhaps in crisis, can't get the bed they desperately need. So when the call comes that your loved one is ready, please be ready too. Pick them up, bring them back to the comfort of family, where healing truly continues. Because caring doesn't end at discharge, it continues with you. A message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs.
And welcome back to the lunchroom at Radio Caribbean International. Now, of course, we want to touch on some very topical matters in terms of the politics of the day. And just last night, I came across an interview that was being held with the island's leader of the opposition and political leader of the United Workers' Party, the Honorable Alan Shastney, speaking to Lisa Joseph, primarily focusing on the matter of the island's main economic driver, that of tourism, and speaking, of course, on a wide range of issues, including that of investment in terms of cruise, and talking about what his vision was vis-a-vis or juxtaposed against what is the vision of the current political party in power, the SLP. And one of the matters, of course, that has been quite topical has been that of the Global Port Holdings deal, or the Global Port Holdings public-private partnership involving the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority and a private entity, multinational company called Global Port Holdings, GPH, which in fact runs a number of and operates a number of ports, cruise ports around the world, from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean and elsewhere. And the big question quite often is that of how does one fund development? And it's a major one, and it is something that all governments have to grapple with. Where does the direct role or direct government intervention and investment end, and when must the private sector take on some of that weight? And of course, the big debate quite often has been the whole issue of foreign direct investment as well as public-private partnerships. And we've seen other forms, of course, of private investment as well, in terms of privatization of entities. That is, of course, another model that has been very topical from country to country around the world. Quite recently, we heard from the island's Minister for Infrastructure, the Honorable Stevenson King, pointing out the matter of the water sector, and in fact indicating that one of the major problems of the water sector has been a lack of investment in the sector, and that effectively the country is simply just not spending enough money to be able to guarantee a properly functioning, well-functioning water sector. So in as much as we speak about water being life and water being so important for development, the reality is that we want it effectively kind of on the cheap, and we have not really been investing what is necessary to be able to keep up. And according to him, an investment in the order of 500 million EC dollars is really necessary to be pumped into the water and sewage company. Can it come from the current rates and what is actually present in terms of utility fees, utility rates? Well, certainly not. It's certainly inadequate to be able to support that level of investment. And so the question is, where is that going to come from? How much is government going to be able to put out, and how much is going to have to come from private investment? And if, of course, there is private involvement, the implications there would mean that there would have to be adjustments in terms of rates as well. And he did juxtapose that whole question, that whole argument against the background or the comparison of what obtains in other areas, in other utilities, pointing out that, well, we, of course, quite often hear complaints about the relative price of electricity rates in the country, and he made that point. But nobody can fault the utility for being one of the most reliable in the region, and making the point that every time you switch on that light, it's going to come on. And so the reliability is there, albeit, of course, you have to pay for that reliability. And the point being made that if you want a reliable source of water, you've got to have to pay for that as well. Now, the matter of the ports has been another area of great interest. And how do you keep up with maintaining and ensuring that we have infrastructure that is in fact going to be able to attract the kind of volumes of visitors and the type of visitors who would hopefully spend more? And of course, the whole matter of cruise tourism has been a major talking point. You may recall many years ago, Alan Shastney, who was in the St. Lucia Hotel and Tourism Authority at that time, did not seem to be such a great fan of actually investments in cruise. And of course, his argument then, and perhaps there is validity to some of it, is that, of course, when you look at the average cruise passenger versus the average stayover arrival or stayover visitor, you would find that the average stayover visitor is spending many times more than the person who is coming merely for a few hours in the day, and who may not even take a package, an excursion package, but if he does, he may do so. And then, of course, you see there's some spin, but then the person who's coming and spending 7, 8, 9, 10 days staying in a hotel, has to pay accommodation, has to buy food, ends up putting a lot more into the economy relative to the cruise passenger. Of course, cruise is about volume, And that is this tended to be what we're seeing in terms of the cruise market. Individuals are coming in, they're coming into destination, and you're bringing thousands of people into a destination all at once. And that, of course, has its tremendous challenges in terms of logistics, in terms of, excuse me, in terms of the transport, excuse me, yeah, in terms of transport, in terms of being able to just handle this large volume of people who have to come in. And that is really part of the challenge. You've got to put in quite a bit of infrastructure to be able to support that and to encourage those individuals to be able to spend more. And it's also a sector that is very centralized in that there are not that many players in terms of cruise operators. And so they too are also looking to see how they can maximize the returns from each and every passenger that comes on their cruise ship. And what you're finding, in fact, is that they will certainly want a day at sea. So in as much as, yes, they're offering the visitor the opportunity to visit different ports and different destinations and get a little sample of each, they also want to ensure that they can put in a few days at sea, because if the passenger's at sea, they're using the facilities on the ship. They're buying things on the ship, and that's good business for them. And of course, the other model that we've seen, especially in the Caribbean, that these cruise operators are actually creating their own ports, their own experiences. And so you have the likes of Disney as a cruise operator. They have their own Disney Island in the Bahamas. You have Carnival having ports like Labadee on the north coast of Haiti, where they effectively have an enclave where effectively everything is owned by them, and they can create their own products. They can create everything to gain more, still giving an experience which the passenger may be looking for, whether it's to be on the beach or to do a zip line. They're giving them all those experiences, but it's all tied in. A vertical integration of the visitor experience with the returns going to the cruise operator. So it's a pretty difficult sector. And so trying to ensure that you get spread is important, because it's important for small business, the vendor, it's important for the taxi operator, it's important for the individuals who have tours and attractions to be able to try to get a bit of the pie in terms of tourism. But the investment in terms of the port infrastructure has been challenging. And we've been down that road in terms of trying to attract the likes of Royal Caribbean, trying to attract Carnival to be able to make those types of investments. And sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, because of course they are also looking at exactly what I just spoke about. Can they create this sort of enclave experience where they in fact are owning the shops, owning a lot of the services? And that has been a challenge. And so of course the whole premise of GPH coming in is that GPH is coming in from the perspective not as a cruise operator, but as a port operator. And that's their area of interest and expertise. And of course, we've heard quite a bit from both sides regarding this matter. And there's an interesting, I think, little piece coming out of Choice TV, in which Choice's Jason Seafley is having a chat with Mr. Lance Armstrong, the head of GPH St. Lucia Cruise Port. And let's take a listen to this interview.
St. Lucian ports for $1 a year. Have the government and the St. Lucians working for Global Port Holdings sold out St. Lucian ports for $1 a year?
I want to categorically say that we did not, as a St. Lucian, first of all, we as a St. Lucian did not sell out the port for $1. And as a company, we did not,
You see, what I'm trying to get at is when we're hearing this dollar a year thing, we have to ask ourselves, what do we get? What do we get if GPH is getting 90% of the income from the cruise port tax, is it?
Lancelot Arnold is the St. Lucian who heads up St. Lucia Cruise Ports and GPH in the Eastern Caribbean. He is bound by a non-disclosure agreement, but agreed to an exclusive interview with Choice News, where we pressed him on what St. Lucia stands to gain from this politically controversial agreement.
What does that amount to in dollars?
That is upwards of, right now I'm trying to, the overall investment was, like I said, 60 million, 20 million of which was used, 17 million US was paid to SLASPA to pay off the debt, so the balance is what's outstanding.
And are you bearing the operational costs that we would have over there? Are those still our operational costs?
No. So as part of the concession agreement, SLASPA gets a part of the head tax. We use the head tax, that's our form of income. We use the head tax to facilitate all of the operational expenses associated with managing cruise in St. Lucia. And in doing that, we have, as part of the agreement as well, we only have Castries Seaport and the Soufrière Port. Those are the two ports that we have responsibility for. So we don't have responsibility for Vieux-Fort.
If Arnold is correct, St. Lucia gets a minor portion of the cruise ship head tax, more than $100 million for port upgrades that St. Lucia owns outright, and millions in debt relief for the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority. It also gets total relief from millions in operating costs for the cruise ports at Castries and Soufrière. That amounts to more than $100 million US debt-free, depending on how much St. Lucia cruise ports can rake in from the cruise industry in the coming years. But the question now is not whether it is a good deal, but whether St. Lucia could have gotten an even better deal, given that the current administration did improve the original GPH agreement once they took over in 2021.
I can't speak specifically to that. Like I said, I joined St. Lucia Cruise Port. I was appointed as GM of St. Lucia Cruise Port and Director of the Eastern Caribbean in December of 2023. The agreement predated me. The agreement came in August of 2023, and I was not a part of any of those negotiations. So, but similar to you, I've heard that there was a better agreement once the deal was signed. All parties had to agree on at that level.
So, in your professional field, like Lucian to Lucian, if you can manage that, given your position, is it not possible that we could have gotten a better deal, a percentage profit-sharing agreement rather than $1 per whatever?
No, but what you say, what you're looking at is, as in anything else, in any agreement, people could say that anybody could have negotiated better. That's just generally how somebody could perhaps work on it. I've in my career, working as a general manager of or CEO of NIPRO or any of those instances, when you've concluded a trade union agreement, there's always the question, someone always says you could have negotiated a better deal. That's generally what it is. I think at this point, as a St. Lucian, that St. Lucia is benefiting tremendously from this. And I'm not speaking from the perspective of GPH, I'm speaking from the position of a St. Lucian, because I'm a St. Lucian first.
Choice News also confronted the GPH director with questions about this year's cruise industry decline, the Banans Bay relocation, whether the company has interest in taking over cargo operations, and accusations of corruption. Over the next few days, Choice News will deliver Arnold's answers to the tough questions, as well as whether GPH is interested in staying in St. Lucia when their current deal expires. For Choice News Now, I'm Jason Seaflay.
Well, lots more to look forward to from that interview, and certainly we'd be looking at that again to see the future parts, to see what the comments are coming out of that. But that's our cue, I think, to take in at this point our weather report, to get an update from the St. Lucia Met Services, of course, which is due at this time.
And it's time for our weather report brought to you by Island Style.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home. Really? Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the style stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up. What are you looking for? Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle. Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous tiles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for. That sounds perfect. I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation. I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and View Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And the forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from between the east and southeast near 17 miles per hour or 28 kilometers per hour. Weather mostly cloudy with scattered showers, which may be heavy and possible isolated showers. And isolated thunderstorms. Conditions are expected to generate gradual improvement from tonight. Residents and motorists are in the areas prone to flooding and landslides are advised to exercise caution and vigilance. The forecast for the Lesser Antilles: cloudy to overcast with moderate to heavy showers, gust winds and thunderstorms over the Lesser Antilles and the Leeward Islands. Elsewhere, partly cloudy to cloudy with scattered showers. Which may be heavy in some locations, and possible isolated thunderstorms. Reminder: strong winds and sea swells are associated with Tropical Storm Jerry will continue to affect the Windward Islands during the forecast period. Moist, unstable conditions over the southern half of the region will cause cloudiness, showers, and possible isolated thunderstorms. Over the remaining part of the region during the forecast period. All tropical storm warning for Jerry has been discontinued. At 11 a.m. today, the center of Tropical Storm Jerry was located near 20.2 north latitude and longitude 63.4 west, or about 140 miles or 225 kilometers north of the northern Windward Islands. Jerry is moving towards the northwest near 16 miles per hour or 26 kilometers per hour. A turn towards the north is expected by the evening. with the motion continuing. Through Sunday, on the forecast track, the center of Jerry will be passing north of the northern Leeward Islands this afternoon. Then away from the island later today. Maximum sustained winds remain 50 miles per hour or 85 kilometers per hour with higher gusts. Little chance of strengthening is expected during the next few days. A tropical wave located over the eastern tropical Atlantic is moving westward near 15 miles per hour or 24 kilometers per hour. And that was your weather report brought to you by Island Style.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Girl, I've been so stressed searching for the perfect tiles to complete my home. Really? Yeah, it's always the same white, beige, and gray tiles with the style stores. Like they're all buying from the same place. You're the design expert. Help me, please. I'm fed up.
What are you looking for?
Something different. Something that says Caribbean beauty and suits my personality. Something vibrant and classy with a little razzle dazzle.
Okay, Ms. Razzle Dazzle, I know just the place. Island Style Tile and Bath, they're my #1 store for everything tile. And with their new In Living Color collection, you'll find the most gorgeous tiles to give you that splash of Caribbean flair you're looking for.
That sounds perfect.
I'll even take you myself and throw in a free design consultation.
I'll never say no to that, sis. I can't afford you anyway.
Visit our Island Style showrooms in Castries, Rodney Bay, and View Fort, or call 450-452 or 453 Tile. We'll help bring your vision to life in living color.
And welcome back to the lunchroom here at Radio Caribbean International. And of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plates today, it is 452-3046, and our WhatsApp number 724-0008. Now, of course, there still is a fair bit of discussion about the island's roads, and albeit we certainly have seen a tremendous bit of improvement in terms of works coming to an end on the Millennium Highway, Julian Alfred Highway, as well as the West Coast Road, but still concerns, of course, over what is pertaining in the north. But we come to that in just a bit. We're going to squeeze in a call at this time. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today, caller? Oh, okay. Go right ahead. As far as I am aware, there's no work going on currently at the Roseau Dam. Right. Right. Well, I'm not. I don't believe it was a Trinidadian firm that was brought in. I think there was a sort of a joint venture with a local firm, as well as in joint venture with another firm. I think Vinci, which is actually a French company, which was supposed to have been doing the actual desilting work. But so was what I recall. But yes, but you are correct in regarding the matter of a lot more still having to be done. In fact, I wouldn't say they only just scratched the surface, but they a substantial amount of material still has to be removed from the dam, which of course is going to take a period of time. It could probably take a couple of years, and so there has to be sort of an ongoing program where you be desilting when it is most advantageous to do so, maybe during the dry seasons and whatnot. So I think the issue is that the fund, the amount of money that would have been was agreed to for the WASCO to borrow has effectively been depleted. That's my understanding. So in other words, what we were paying, the amount that you're paying to cover the loan is only going to cover so much work, and that I think is where you've got the problem. So in fact there were costs with respect to the sediment disposal area that took up quite a bit of the fund, and so right now I'm not sure that unless if there's perhaps going to be some additional funds sourced from somewhere else, I don't know how that aspect is going to go forward, which is why the point is being made that there's a substantial amount of other investment that has to be made. Now, the dam is only one aspect. Now, that is your raw water storage. But then even with the water that you have in the dam, you have challenges taking that water to the treatment plant, at the Thibbles treatment plant at Cicero. All right? So that's why right now WASCO has just signed on to a new concessionary loan from the Caribbean Development Bank, which is going to cover the cost of replacing the existing pipeline, the raw water pipeline, right? So no, so that aspect I think is in the maybe $26 million, but that's going to be done over I think the next. Right. So but he's talking about an overall investment plan. So you're talking about like that is just one element of that investment plan. Plus you now have to look at getting the existing treatment plant back up to a reasonable operating capacity. So it was originally designed to handle 10 million gallons per day. Right now I think it's maybe on a good day it might do 7, right? So they're trying to at least get it back up to a point where it can in fact meet its that capacity, right? But in addition to that even the 10 million gallons right now is insufficient to be able to supply the demand that exists in the north. So you in fact have to look at augmenting that supply, the capacity of that the Thibbles treatment plant, or looking at the potential of another treatment plant, whatever the approach may be in that regard. So then so there was a feasibility study that was done looking at a dam to serve the south of the island, so the region from Dennery up to Choiseul, right? To be able to serve that southern region, because of course what you have currently is that you've got discrete supply networks, right? So very small networks that are just serving isolated areas. They're not connected together, and of course they are very susceptible to the impacts of drought or low rainfall periods, because they don't have sufficient water storage either. So the idea was that you would create a central dam that would then be able to feed that entire belt from Dennery all the way up to Choiseul. and they looked at a number of different options. And I must say that this is a dated study, right? So this is something that is about 25 years old now already. And they looked at a number of, I think about 5 different options, inclusive of looking at potential reservoirs or dams on the VA4 River, the 2 different VA4 rivers. They also looked at, I think, the Canals River, and they looked at the Trumasse River. And based on that feasibility and what they looked at, the Trumasse River was seen to be the best option. And well, there you go. And so that's the other aspect that WASCO is dealing with, the issue of climate change. So you now, and not just climate change, but you also have challenges with respect to abstraction for other uses. You have issues of deforestation. So a lot of those measures have to be looked at within a full comprehensive context of how do you manage your water resources. In fact, going back to the 1970s, for example, they were looking at other potential areas that should become catchments, right? Like in the north of the island, there was a recommendation to undertake afforestation in the upper regions of the Dauphin River. That never happened. Other areas, of course, we in fact even lost catchments, like the Mornier area, for example. There still is a potential catchment with respect to the Cul-de-Sac River. And maybe that may have to come on in terms of what you're talking about. How can you... Right, exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah, well, there's the main one that comes from the interior. Oh, you call it Lacombe. Okay, Mount Lacombe. But I think that's more on the Mabuya side. But yes, right. And then you have the Mark River, which comes further north from that one. But it's primarily the one that is in the... But then, so coming back now to the other issues that you have now, Kola, and which is more on the demand side of it. Because when you look at, I think I made the point before, even the driest part of St. Lucia gets a lot more water than most places in the United States of America on average per year, right? And so the need to also look at what we can do in terms of reducing on the demand for potable water is another area. But of course, it then means that there are certain actions that have to happen at the level of the home, the consumer, the building, in terms of rainwater harvesting, in terms of... Right. And right. Now so you have these very intense rainfall events, but you cannot capture it, you cannot store the water. And so therefore you have to also have storage. Yes, you have to have your centralized storage, but you also have to... Well, yes, but then you also have to look at yes, so that's one, the raw water storage, ensuring that you can actually store it at that point, but you also need storage of the potable water. You also need storage of water at the location itself. So in the same way that we are right now promoting in the electricity sector the whole concept of distributed generation, having people to have solar panels on their homes, we have to also be thinking about the water sector in a similar way. Right, so Bermuda is a good example of that. Right, exactly that. And so every roof in Bermuda is a water catchment. Yeah, and then of course in some of the islands in the northern and the leewards, you find that too in Anguilla and Antigua to some extent as well. You know, you've got to. There has to be a mandate to say that look, you've got to have a certain amount of storage capacity, and in particular, where you're dealing with homes that are on high elevations or in towards the end of the system, where it is most difficult for the utility to be able to ensure that you can get a reliable supply, because that's the pressure that you have, and that's why you'll find that people in places like Carelli and maybe Viesiqui on hills, right? They or any people on elevations, right? Exactly, and that'll be a challenge that'll continue. And that's why I'm saying it's going to be very important. You see, we have a planning problem. Caller, you used to live in Trinidad, and when you look at the development in Trinidad, in the east-west corridor from Diego Martin through Port of Spain all the way to Arima, right? Pretty much most of 90%, 95% of the people are living on relatively low elevations, right? On the Caroni, it's on relatively flat land, right? Right, but my point is, and then they don't have so much of a concern in terms of pumping, like what we have here in Saint Lucia, and then even in Trinidad they have challenges. They have serious challenges to get people to be able to supply the water reliably to people at low elevations, right? We have an even more immense challenge when we look at our circumstances, because we are mountainous, and how we have allowed development to happen, that's just the reality of what we. Some people say the horse has bolted a long time ago and there is no choice, but the reality is we have encouraged a lot of development on high elevations where it is simply very challenging to be able to support those communities. It means, therefore, that all the water has to be pumped. You can't there's no, and that's an additional cost, eh? Okay, caller. Thanks very much for that engagement. And then, of course, in addition to that, you also have the reality of, yes, people are talking about, you've heard, well, why don't we just do desal? Why don't we just, get maybe some reverse osmosis plants and run them? And the reality is that those actually are pretty costly to run and operate. Right? If we think it's costly now, in terms of the water that we are utilizing, it's going to be many, many, many times higher in terms of desalination, because the actual process is going to require electricity. You're talking about disposal of brine. You're talking about the issue of the filtration. It's simply a more energy intensive and cost intensive type of water, and that's not necessarily going to be a solution. It might be a solution in the case of emergencies, which is currently how it is tending to be utilized by many institutions that actually do have desal already. Let's take in another call. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today? Hi, caller. How are you doing? Good, good. I think somebody told me that you had made a recommendation on a program last week, Friday, and by this week they were already putting up a sign regarding, is it John Street in Leclerc? So it seems that you've got a great influence there, caller. You spoke to them in the sense of, and I understood that there was a sign going up just yesterday. Somebody told me that, yes, they were. Right. No, it's not. Yes. Right. Okay. Right. Mm. Right. Right. Mm. Okay. I believe the design is for 90 beds. From what I recall, it was originally 90 beds. I'm not sure that there's been any change, but yeah, but well, I guess you could say in the region of 100, but I think it's 90 beds. Well, I heard that repeated by the I heard that repeated last night actually by the leader of the opposition on the program he was on with Lisa Joseph. I'm not sure um, where that figure is coming from and how he's determined that. So I don't. Again, that is a you know you have a project. When he found it, it was $98 million that was spent, right? And they were requiring, and they had available another $40 million to spend on the hospital, somewhere about, let's say, 137 to 140. That was available. Equipment was available, materials were available for completion. You stop it, and then you spend however much money on other things, on demolition, on a report, on and then on a new wing. So when he's talking about that 400 million, he has to say, well, look, a lot of that money was spent already. A lot of money was spent even under his 2010, Then when he came back in again, I think we saw maybe about 130 million, maybe or so. I'm not even sure what the final figure is on the south wing slash box, right? So if you're including that, right, and then what had to be spent to now complete the hospital, maybe you might get close to 400 million. But it's disingenuous to make it seem that 400 million, the 400 million is. Yes. Huh? Well, I don't know how he got that figure because using his own logic and the 400 million, it would have been 8 million. It'd be 8 million per bed if we're using his logic of 50 beds. But I don't think that it is in fact that case in any case. And like I said, it's the reference points that he's using. So he's not considering what about the fact. And this has always been the issue, of this project. Why the need? Why was it necessary to go and build and spend a whole amount of over $130 million on this new wing, which still is not complete, right? And would probably require even more than what is currently being spent on the completion of what is being completed right now, right? There is not, in fact, enough money to go and complete the south wing, right? The box part, right? So, I mean, why was that even contemplated as the solution? Because clearly they did not have proper estimates as to what was going to be the final cost of this new building that they were building. It's very clear. He gave the impression that, well, it was going to all cost, he could do everything under 100 million EC dollars. Then when we sort of saw turning for the that new box part, we were then told that they got 10 million left over from US, $27 million from the Taiwanese, and they were getting an additional 20 million US from the Taiwanese. Total, 81 million. They spent more than that amount on that project, and the project is far from being complete with no utilities, no MEP, no furniture, fixtures, and equipment. There's a whole host of stuff that has to go in. No medical equipment, right? So that facility was very, very much far away from completion. And so then the big question that we've got to ask Mr. Joseph, how much was it really going to cost to complete the full hospital, which they were in fact building? Does he even know? Does he have a figure? Could he share the estimates, bill of quantities, to say how much it is actually going to cost? I mean, that is the problem that we have in this. Well, regardless of he's an engineer, but he was the minister. He was the minister responsible. So therefore, he had to have been asking those kind of questions, because you don't start a project like that without the requisite assessments that are done. You don't start a project like that without a proper design, without a proper bill of quantities, with all of those things needed to be in place to know how much. And right, he's very correct by saying the airport should have been built, but then he came in. He was part of the whole dismantling of the PPP, which was going to complete an airport with a properly sized terminal within a properly designed master plan, not of what we are seeing currently unfolding effectively, right? Because you end up with a situation where you've got all manner of challenges in terms of the adjacencies of services, of what's supposed to be where. I mean, it is certainly very concerning that we are at this point right now with respect. Yeah, no, I mean, I know what you're talking about the renderings that were shown, but that has been redesigned. It's supposed to have been scaled down because, of course, you were talking about a facility that had over 385,000 square feet when the recommended size coming out of the master plan was somewhere around 280,000, I think it was at the time. So there's a lot that has gone into that whole airport matter that is quite unfortunate. But of course, it's the same way with DSH. He's trying to argue that, well, DSH was a great thing and DSH created so many jobs. Really? DSH? I mean, I've also seen this argument about and this is an argument that DSH is claiming that the government was the one that took away its business license. Now, I don't even know what business license was taken away from DSH. What was that about? I didn't even know we had any kind of special requirement in terms of are they referring to a trade license? Is that really what it is? What I to make that claim, yeah, it. Well, of course, we definitely do need to ask the right questions about. Look, Dominica. I mean, I'm very, very familiar with the Dominica airport project, and they are going to have a very nice airport, but they still are very good ways away from achieving that. In that, they still have a lot of work. I mean, they're just starting with the foundations right now for the new terminal building, but it's a brand new and it's very well laid out. It's very well designed, very thoughtfully done, with professionals who are working who prepared a very good master plan for that international airport. And I agree, we would have been in a much better situation with respect to it had we gone the route of the PPP. It was totally disregarded. Yes, it was completely disregarded. So the location of the terminal was completely changed. The scale of the terminal was per the master plan, per the forecast estimates as what was required. Those were not adhered to. They did something that was completely different from what was actually recommended in terms of the design approach under the 2015 master plan, right? Well, caller, remember, this is an individual who, in fact, said that he was not going to say anything on St. Jude had he not finished St. Jude. And he has not said finished St. Jude. He did not. And he's, of course, still making quite a lot of utterances. So there's no surprise there. Okay, caller, have a good one. Take care. All the best. And, of course, to all those out there who've called in and who've listening, we do hope that you can have a very safe and blessed weekend. And take care on the roads. Of course, there was a notice coming out from the Ministry of Infrastructure regarding the Viesikwi Norbert Road, and to exercise caution, remembering that, of course, it is a road under construction. There are areas that where you've got earthworks and exposed material coming down, so the road is quite likely to be a little slippery. So certainly you need to exercise good caution on that road in particular, and of course on all the roads right now, given that they will be wet, and so we do hope that persons can be very careful on the roads. Do have yourself a very blessed weekend. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., saying goodbye.